still unconscious Jinling suddenly sat up. Eyes still closed, he stumbled his way back onto his feet in front of Wei Wuxian and Lan Wangji. The former remained still, wanting to see exactly what the boy would do. He watched Jinling slowly circle around him, lift his leg, and step back into the wall, returning to the same place he had stood when he had been buried. Jinling placed his hands flat by his sides. Even his posture was identical. Once more, Wei Wuxian pulled the boy out of the wall. The situation was both amusing and strange, and he wanted to tell Lan Wangji that it was best if they didn't stay too long. But a spate of frenzied barking suddenly echoed from far away, sending shivers coursing through him. From the time he and Lan Wangji had entered, the spirit dog had obediently sat at the entrance, wagging its tail anxiously and pitifully, waiting for them to bring its owner back. Up to this point, it hadn't let out a single stray bark, but now its howls were more relentless than ever. "Is occurring outside of the fortress," Lan Wangji said. He reached out to hold Jinling up, but Wei Wuxian beat him to it. He placed Jinling on his back and said, "Let's head out and check." The two raced back toward the entrance, and as soon as they stooped through the hole in the wall, they saw the black-maned spirit dog's back. Facing one particular direction, it issued a low, throaty growl. Though Wei Wuxian had braced himself before nearing the entrance, he still found the sound unbearable, and involuntarily he retreated a few steps. However, when the dog turned his head and saw that he was carrying Jinling on his back, it leapt off its feet and flew toward him. Wei Wuxian let out a miserable cry. Just as he was on the verge of hurling Jinling off and away from him, Lan Wangji stepped before him and blocked the dog's approach. The dog immediately halted and stuck its tail between its legs again. The only reason its tongue wasn't also lolling out of its mouth was because it was carrying something inside it. Lan Wangji walked forward, bent down, and retrieved a piece of cloth from between its teeth. Then he handed it to Wei Wuxian to examine. The material appeared to have been torn from the front of a robe. At the very least, someone must have wandered by or snooped around. Moreover, they must have behaved suspiciously, or else the spirit dog's barks wouldn't have been brimming with hostility. "He can't have gone far. Let's chase after him," Wei Wuxian said. However, Lan Wangji replied, "Unnecessary. I know his identity." "I know too," Wei Wuxian replied. "The people who have been spreading rumors about Xinglu Ridge and releasing walking corpses into the area, and the people who constructed the fortress and the maze illusion, they must be on the same side. Plus, there were those sabers. But if we don't catch him right now, catching him later is going to be a huge pain." "I will pursue him," Lan Wangji said. "You and Jinling. I'll take him down to the ridge and back to Qinghe to find a place to rest, just near the place where we found that crack. Let's meet back up there," Wei Wuxian said. Though this reply had been issued with extreme urgency, Lan Wangji paused for a moment, prompting Wei Wuxian to speak again. "Shouldn't you go now? If you put it off any longer, you won't even catch a glimpse of his shadow. I'll be there." Upon hearing, "I'll be there," Lan Wangji leveled a penetrating gaze at him and said no more. The man turned and began walking away as requested, but immediately the spirit dog dashed toward Wei Wuxian, who let out a pitiful wail. Wait, take the dog away, take it away," he shouted. Lan Wangji had no choice but to turn back around. He glanced down at the animal, who was too frightened of him to put up a fight. Whimpering, it chased after him, turning its head to peek at Jinling once in a while. Wiping the sweat off of his forehead, Wei Wuxian turned and glanced at the mysterious structures of pale stone, then lifted Jinling onto his back once more and proceeded straight down Xinglu Ridge. Dusk fell. The sight of Wei Wuxian carrying an unconscious youth across his back, both covered in mud and looking desperate, drew the eye of many a passerby. The two returned to the street where Jinling's dog had initially chased him down and found an inn. Using the money he had gotten off of Lan Wangqi, Wei Wuxian bought 2 new sets of clothes and got a room. Once he was inside, he first removed Jinling's sparks amid snow robe, which was dirty and wrinkled from being buried in the earth. Then he pulled off the boy's boots. Suddenly, he halted. On Jinling's lower leg, there seemed to be a patch of shadow. When Wei Wuxian squatted down and rolled up the boy's trousers, he discovered that the shadow was no shadow after all, but a black contusion. Moreover, it wasn't the result of an injury. It was a cursed mark. Cursed marks were signs placed by evil spirits upon their prey. If one appeared on you, it meant you had provoked some sort of highly malicious being who was sure to find you. Perhaps not for a long time, or perhaps the very same night. In milder cases, it would tear away the chunk of your body on which the mark had been placed. In severe cases, it would simply take your life. Jinling's entire leg had turned black, and the bruising continued to spread upward. Wei Wuxian had never seen a black so intense, or a cursed mark that had spread over such a large area. The more he looked at it, the graver his expression became. He removed Jinling's trousers and undid the boy's inner robes. Only upon seeing that his charger's chest and abdomen were still clean and untainted by the mark spread, did he let out a relieved sigh. Just then, Jinling's eyes opened. For a long time, the boy stared stupidly as the cool wind blew across his bare skin all around him. Then, the haze of sleep suddenly cleared, and he rolled over and clambered up, his face flushed with crimson. "Whoa, what are you doing?" he roared. Wei Wuxian smiled as he spoke. "Oh dear, you're awake." As though he had just experienced the terror of all terrors, Jinling pulled his garments closed and shrunk back to the corner of the bed. "What are you trying to do? Where are my clothes? Where's my sword? Where's my dog?" he demanded. "I was just about to dress you," Wei Wuxian said. His expression and the tone of his voice were full of kind solicitude. He had the air of an old grandmother wrapping a winter coat around her grandson. Jinling, however, was still pasted to the wall, his hair in complete disarray. "I am not gay," he yelled. Wei Wuxian exclaimed joyfully, "What a coincidence! I am." In one swipe, Jinling grabbed his sword from beside the bed. He gave off the energy of someone who was prepared to kill the man in front of him and then take his own life to preserve his innocence, should that man take a step closer. Finally, Wei Wuxian managed to bring an end to his raucous laughter. "Why are you so scared? I was just joking. I worked so hard to dig you out of that wall, and you won't even thank me." Jinling hurriedly raised his hand and ran his fingers through a section of his messy hair, smoothing it out so he looked somewhat more dignified. "If it wasn't for that, I would have already killed you 1,000 times for daring to take off my clothes," he raged. "Don't," Wei Wuxian said. "Once is painful enough. All right, put down the sword." Still, in a confused muddle, Jinling obeyed and laid down his weapon. Though his living soul had departed his body during the soul inquiry, and he couldn't remember anything clearly, he did have a hazy recollection that the person in front of him had dug him out, and that the same man had carried him the entire way down the ridge. He had still been conscious for a period of time after he was buried in the wall, and could not have felt more terrified and hopeless. He hadn't suspected in the least that the person who would tear down the wall and tear down the terror and hopelessness within him would be someone whom Jinling had despised since the moment he first laid eyes on him. The color of the boy's face alternated between red and white, with confusion and embarrassment, and his flitting and fluttering thoughts refused to settle. Abruptly, he glanced at the window. With a start, he noticed that the sky had already darkened and become dusted with a few scattered stars. Just as Wei Wuxian bent down in order to collect the freshly purchased clothes, which had fallen haphazardly to the floor, Jinling leapt off the bed, yanked his boots on, grabbed his outer robes, and dashed out of the room. At first, Wei Wuxian had thought that Jinling would be exhausted for a while after he had been put through so much. But, as it turned out, young people really did have boundless energy. In the blink of an eye, the boy flew off and disappeared like the wind. Remembering the far from trivial matter of the cursed mark on Jinling's leg, he hurriedly shouted, "Why are you running? Come back." As Jinling sprinted away, he pulled his wrinkled and mud-encrusted clan robes over himself and shouted back, "Don't follow me." The boy's body was light and agile, and his legs were long. In 2 or 3 steps, he was already down the stairs and rushing out of the inn. Wei Wuxian chased him through more than a few streets, but Jinling threw him off the scent and vanished without a trace. Wei Wuxian thoroughly searched for the boy, but twilight descended and the streets gradually emptied of people. He was getting a headache. "Ridiculous," he said. "This child is truly ridiculous." Just as he was about to give up, a final hope emerged in the form of the raging shouts of a youthful man at the far end of the street. He ran off and disappeared just because someone reprimanded you about a few things. What are you, a spoiled princess? Your temper gets worse by the day. It was Zhang Chang. With utmost haste, Wei Wuxian dashed into an alley. Soon he heard Jinling's voice. "Haven't I come back just fine? Stop shouting at me." It seemed that the boy hadn't come to Jinghe alone. No surprise. At Dafan Mountain, Zhang Chang had come to support his nephew. So why wouldn't he come this time too? Only, it seemed that uncle and nephew had gotten into an argument in Jinghe town, which caused Jinling to set off for Xinglu Ridge on his own. Jinling must have run off so hastily because Zhang Chang had threatened some sort of punishment if he didn't return before darkness fell. "Fine," Zhang Chang said. "You look like you took a tumble in a muddy ditch. You call that fine? Aren't you embarrassed to be wearing your clan's uniform? Go back and change immediately. Out with it. What did you run into today?" Annoyed, Jinling said, "I've already told you. I didn't run into anything. It was just a fall. The whole journey was a waste of time." He then let out a cry. "Don't pull on me. I'm not 3. "So I can't look after you any longer," Zhang Chang said harshly. "Let me tell you, even if you were 30, I'd still drag you with me. The next time you dare run about without telling anyone, you'll be served by my whip." I went alone exactly because I didn't want anyone to help or look after me. Without commenting on anything else, Zhang Chang really isn't wrong when he says that Jinling has the attitude of a spoiled princess, Wei Wuxian thought. "And now what's happened?" Zhang Chang said. "What exactly did you accomplish? Where's the spirit dog your younger uncle gave you?" Han Chan must have driven it away into some hidey hole in who knows where. Just as Wei Wuxian was thinking this, a couple of familiar barks echoed from the other end of the alley. Immediately, he paled. His legs began moving spontaneously, and, as though a poison arrow was hurtling after him, he dashed out of the alley. the spirit dog bounded through the same alley toward Wei Wuxian, past him, and leapt to Jinling's side, wagging its tail at the boy, brimming with adoration. The dog's appearance most likely meant that Lan Wangji had already caught the person who had been snooping around the stone fortress and had gone to the agreed-upon rendezvous point. However, right then, Wei Wuxian was too preoccupied to think of this. He had dashed right in front of Zhang Chang, Jinling, and a large group of the Zhang clan disciples. For a moment, both parties froze. Without a word, Wei Wuxian turned around and ran. He had barely taken more than a few steps before he heard the buzz and crackle of electricity. Violet lightning leapt at him and snaked around his lower leg. Numbing, itching pain coursed up and through his entire body, and he was yanked backward, immediately tumbling to the ground. He felt the pit of his stomach tighten. Then someone grabbed the back of his robe and hauled him to his feet. At breakneck speed, Wei Wuxian reached for his spirit-locking pouch, but someone else snatched it away before him. Zhang Cheng lugged him a few steps to the front of the nearest inn and kicked down the already half-latched door. The innkeeper had just been preparing to close for the night, but the sudden sight of this beautifully and expensively dressed, youthful, handsome man kicking down his door and hauling someone inside frightened him out of his wits. Zhang Cheng wore a foul expression and appeared as though he was about to slice Wei Wuxian open from chest to abdomen and disembowel him on the spot. A disciple approached the innkeeper and, in a low voice, gave a few words of explanation, then pressed some silver into his hands. Promptly, the man scrambled away, hid in the back room, and did not come out again. Without requiring instruction, the many Zhang clan disciples immediately fanned out through the interior as well as outside the building, encircling it and refusing to allow even a single drop of water to slip through. Standing to one side, Jinling looked at the scene with eyes full of bewilderment. He appeared as though he wanted to say something, but hesitated. Zhang Cheng addressed him harshly. "I'll deal with you in a moment. Wait here and don't move." From as early as Jinling could remember, he had never seen Zhang Cheng's face make the expression it was currently making. His uncle, who had led the distinguished Yunmeng Zhang clan alone since the man had been young, had been cold, severe, and gloomy for years and years on end. Not a single lenient or merciful word left Zhang Cheng's mouth if he could help it, nor was he ever willing to offer charity and kindness. But right now, though the man spent every ounce of his effort suppressing all unnecessary expressions, his eyes held a terrifying glimmer. The face, which had always and everywhere been etched with sneering arrogance, the face which had forever been shrouded in a layer of dark haze, seemed to fill with light. But it was difficult to determine whether the emotion which penetrated and lit all its corners was a fuming, teeth-gnashing rage, a festering, bone-penetrating hatred, or a mad, violent ecstasy.